Eden, welcome to you both. Now, a quick reminder from me that if you want more great royal news and views, there are two things you can do. Number one, make sure that you subscribe to the Daily Mail Royals YouTube channel. You click that subscribe button for free to be notified whenever we put out a new show. And you can subscribe to the Palace Confidential newsletter. That's got royal insight from your favourite royal experts, and it too is free. We are so good to you. There's a QR code on screen now which you can scan using your phone's camera. It's oh so easy. And if you are watching on a phone, we'll put a link to that in the description below. Okay, let's get started. We're going to kick things off with a rare joint engagement between King Charles and his son, Prince William, and that's happening tonight. And of course, it wouldn't be a thing without our Rebecca in tow. What's happening? Tell us everything.
Yeah, because obviously we see them together at a lot of state occasions, but not really on private engagements or, official engagements.
So this is a real rarity.
Absolutely, yeah, and it's great. So they're going to be at the Natural History Museum, which is one of my favourite buildings in London. It's so beautiful. And it's a big event, the road to COP30, which is the big climate change conference in Brazil, which is happening in November. They're there because actually William is going to be announced as the representative who's representing the British royal family and the British government at this conference. His Earthshot Awards is actually out at Rio a few days before COP. You'll start to see how these things work. There's a big thought process that goes on behind them. The King as normally would have gone when he was Prince of Wales, but obviously there are different priorities now for him for the government, although I wouldn't rule out him going to one of these climate change conferences in the future. But they'll be there together. They're visiting a lot of stalls and exhibitions highlighting both their environmental contributions, because they've both been, long green campaigners for over the years, and it'll be really fascinating to see them together. Just take me back to what you were just saying about the King would love to focus on these things, but he has to be mindful of what the government's priorities are. What do you mean? Well, obviously, when he was Prince of Wales, obviously there would be certain things he would be required to officially do, but he could largely create his own diary and create his own agenda and priorities, which is what William can now do. But obviously, as head of state, there are a lot of things that the government need him to do. So, for example, the weekend straight after COP, it's the big Remembrance Days event, and in the run-up to that there's a lot of stuff here that he will need to do, so he just has to be mindful of those particular things as priorities instead. But what I think's nice is they've brought father and son together, because obviously it's an issue that they have so much in common over and they're so passionate about. Indeed, and it's true, isn't it, that people do really get excited about these joint engagements, don't they, Richard?
I love joint engagements. We remember William was with Catherine at the Natural History Museum in the rain not so long ago. I think you were there too. So it's always wonderful to sort of observe the body language, and this is particularly interesting because there's been loads of claims and gossip recently that the King wasn't very happy with Prince William. There were suggestions, I think Tina Brown, the royal biographer, even claimed that the King was more annoyed with William than he was with Prince Harry, which did sound very far-fetched at the time, and I think we'll see this evening how close they are really, and how they work together on something which they're both extremely passionate about. Well, inevitably the body language experts will be out in force, won't they, in the wake of those gossipy bits. Rebecca, while we've got you, before you scurry off to hang out with various royals again, I'm going to make the most of it. So let's stick with the King for a moment. And he's been criticised, hasn't he, in other areas for meeting a former aide, and one who has left it under a cloud more than once. Yes, it's a very good scoop that was in the Mail on Sunday that weekend, that the King had a meeting with Michael Fawcett. It's a name that will probably be quite familiar to kind of most royal watchers. He's worked with the King for a very long time, and I'm told about 3 months ago he came to Windsor Castle and had a meeting with the King. Now, people may remember that in 2021 he was basically forced to resign his position as the chief executive of what was then the Prince's Foundation, King Charles's big charity, over claims that he facilitated cash for access and was helping a Saudi national to get a knighthood and British citizenship potentially in return for large donations to the charity. Now,
The police investigated it. They decided not to proceed, so none of these allegations have effectively been proved, but he did resign as a result of the scandal. And it's not the first time. He was a valet to the king, an indispensable valet for many years, but was forced to resign over bullying allegations. He then came back and then was forced to resign again over the selling off of royal gifts for cash. So he's someone that's had various allegations swirling him over the years, and the king's always kept him on board because he actually really trusts him, and he's a very loyal servant to him. I know. Okay. A loyal servant to him. I think he's one of these things that he makes life a lot easier for the king. He knows when it comes to entertaining, instinctively what flowers to have on the table and what dishes to serve. He was very successful as chief executive in turning around his charity and getting a lot of big charitable donations in, but was it unwise for the king to meet him? I suspect it was.
Some people say that he even imitates the way the king stands and...
Yes, I mean anyone that knows him, that he came as do all of us from kind of humble. Sorry, I don't want to actually presume. I shouldn't. You might not come from humble origins. I
come from the poshest areas of Western Sydney.
I come from very humble origins, but and I'd like to think I haven't changed that much. But people who know Michael Fawcett will say he's definitely taken on some of the airs and graces of aristocracy along the ways, the way his cuffs are and his cufflinks, and like you say, the way he's... Sorry, I'm really digging myself a hole here, aren't I? He was a very close, member of staff to the king. But as I say, the explanation was that, and this is true, that when you're monarch, if you have a long-serving member of staff leaving, that person will often come in for a kind of formal goodbye. And sometimes...
But he left in 2021.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
Sometimes, of course, those formal goodbyes are put back because of ill health, and Michael Fawcett has had a lot of ill health over the years. I still don't personally see it as much of an argument. I think once he's left, they should have left well alone, personally.
It slightly reminds me, Richard, of somebody flying to New York to say goodbye to their dear close friend Jeffrey Epstein. Sorry to say. But, is this a good idea or a bad idea?
Only similar in the sense of is it wise to meet questionable characters? And Michael Fawcett is definitely controversial. As a social diarist, I've been writing about him for years and have met him. And it's fair to say lots of people in royal service do not have a good word to say about him. But as Rebecca said, the King and Queen loved him, they really did, in terms of he was just a brilliant fixer and also was fantastic at raising money. But he is very controversial, and I think it's very unwise to have anything to do with him. I mean, just at the weekend, in fact, the day before this story, I ran a story about his son's business, which it's worth a look at because it's very curious. At the age of 17, his son set up a business working with luxury goods companies, and it made so much money that it had to pay £500,000 in tax. So we're talking vast sums. Then it's gone bust, this firm, and it owes the hard-pressed taxpayers of Britain £500,000.
Great.
And then Fawcett's son just bought back the company, the goodwill from it, and sets up with a different company. So I personally think that's outrageous.
Yeah.
And it's very intriguing, the connections with his father there. So, my advice to the king would be don't invite him round for tea again in a hurry.
Indeed. Well, if you're interested in that story that Richard mentions, we'll put a link in the description below. But let's move on to something a bit cheerier. Princess Catherine is in Oxfordshire today.
She is. She's out and about on a public engagement, visiting a Home Start centre in connection with her big early years projects. Recently, we discussed, I think, on the programme that they'd brought out a new range of animations to help encourage volunteers and professionals and parents in the area with interactions with young people, being the most the ages of 0 to 5 being the most formative areas, time of your life. And she's there for that. But also to launch that today, Kensington Palace have revealed that she's written a public essay in conjunction with an American academic about the importance of personal relationships. And in this time where we're very disconnected, and all of us, and we're all guilty of it, doom scrolling on our phones and maybe not looking our children so much in the eye as we should, to say how important that personal connection is, and let's not forget it. So that's another new step and quite a bold move for her.
Interesting. Well, let's briefly look at Queen Camilla now, who posted a very sweet and funny comment about the death of a dear friend, and a friend that's in one way or another touched all our lives.
Yeah, we all knew her fairly well. Dame Jilly Cooper. I'm not sure how aware our viewers abroad are of her, but I
bet they are.
She is in the UK. I mean, the phrase national treasure is overused, but definitely not in her case. She was, one of the most brilliant and brightest and naughtiest writers of her generation. She's found new favour actually in recent years with Rivals, her book being made into a very popular Disney series. And she was also a good friend of Queen Camilla. They were all part of that Cotswold set. It's no secret that her kind of infamous Lothario anti-hero, Rupert Campbell Black, was based on Camilla's ex-husband, Andrew Parker Bowles.
Oh, he was one of the inspirations.
One of the inspirations, yes, exactly. I think they were quite a fast and loose set, so there were a few, but Andrew's always definitely had the finger very much pointed at him. And very sadly, she died at the weekend after a fall, I was literally only with her and the Queen 2 weeks ago at a big literary event, and she was on such brilliant form. And there was the sweetest tribute, and really personal tribute from Queen Camilla. And it's important to say they're asked for tributes a lot, members of the royal family, and they don't often give them because, of course, once you give for one, you feel like you have to give for another. Yeah. And there's lots of very worthy people. They just can't do it for everyone. But I think they made an exception here because she was a personal friend, as well as someone who was just a literary giant in our country, and talking about her. And there was just a wonderful phrase at the end of the tribute in which she said, may her hereafter be full of handsome men and devoted dogs. And anyone that's read a Jilly Cooper novel will know how uniquely appropriate that is.
And we're
God bless Jilly.
Sending our huge love and condolences to her family. She's much loved.
Yeah, she was.
Let's talk about Sophie, Richard, Duchess of Edinburgh. She's been back to Africa.
Yeah, I mean, she's so hardworking, Sophie, and she does so many of these foreign trips and engagements which are pretty heavy stuff, I mean, in this case, she's gone to the Democratic Republic of Congo, and it's very significant because it's her second visit. When she went in 2022, it was the first time a member of the royal family had visited that country. And the strong theme of her visit this time is about sexual violence in conflict. It's a country that has seen conflict, and she was speaking to survivors and all about this issue, and one which she is very serious about. And so it's been really good to see. It's because it's a heavy issue. It's not one that necessarily gets much attention, and Sophie's visits don't always, but she's really doing some good, worthwhile work.
She really is. And Rebecca, it would seem she would have been there at the request of the British government. So presumably they know she's happy to go to countries with these really serious issues and that she can really handle it.
Yeah, I mean, she's considered an incredibly safe pair of hands, but also an incredibly knowledgeable one, specifically on this issue. It's something she has quietly, learnt about and grown a louder voice in that sphere, standing up for victims and survivors. I'm slightly gutted actually, because I was offered the chance to go with her on this trip, but for various reasons, things here I couldn't. But I really want to go with her on another one because I think it's such an important issue, and I think she's, a brave and a powerful voice speaking out about it.
I love that she highlights issues like that, and she's not afraid.
I did a piece with her about it. Not so long ago, to mark one of her landmark birthdays, and I listened to her, and I think I said on this programme about it, that I listened to her give her a 7-minute, I timed it, off-the-cuff speech, no notes, no nothing, about this issue, to a group of charity officials, of government officials. She didn't get a word wrong. She was a really strong voice on this, so I'm really looking forward to being able to cover that a lot more.
Indeed, yes. Now let's have a look at some of your comments now. And after we discussed Princess Anne's visit to Ukraine last week, we wondered if we had many viewers in that region, and we were delighted to discover that we did. Like Mariana Stoilova, who says, I started watching Palace Confidential to improve my English language skills. Gosh.
That's a heavy burden.
I know. Sorry about that. Apologies now. Now I watch it because of the interesting stories, analysis, and the calm and friendly tone that rules the show. Bulgaria, Eastern Europe. Thanks, Mariana. Thank you for that. And thanks to Rita, who wrote this from Lithuania. Greeting from Vilnius. I was 16 years old when the Queen and then Prince Charles visited Lithuania in 2006, and it still remains to this day one of the most exciting diplomatic events in modern history for Lithuania, next to the Pope's, Bush and Biden's visits. I'd say it's better than those. Better than those. The Queen was informed about her Lithuanian roots. While Aliona also writes from the region, watching this from Russia and wondering, might King Charles play a radical part in peacemaking between the two countries? Like, for example, invite all three leaders of Russia, Ukraine and USA to Windsor Castle and say, okay, guys, let's figure this out together once and for all. I'm not sure if I can hear King Charles saying, okay, guys, but Rebecca, Charles for peacemaker, what do you think?
I've heard of crazier suggestions.
Yeah,
I mean,
true.
As Prince of Wales, I mean, on a serious note, he spent his entire lifetime as a convener, often on faith issues, but also on politics, bringing things together, people together. And don't forget, you know, recently over the state visit of President Trump to the UK, he was widely praised for what people believe was actively changing President Trump's view on Ukraine and the way this ongoing conflict should be handled. So I've heard of stranger things. I wouldn't necessarily rule it out.
Okay, watch this space. Well, we do love to hear from you, our global Palace Confidential family. Thank you so much for those comments. Any more Eastern European viewers, we'd love to hear from you, and we should shout out to Yulia Vigan in Moldova too. Hello to you. Now, lots of you commented about Prince William's interview with Eugene Levy, which we discussed in last week's show. One of those was Amira Khan, who said, I had tears in my eyes watching William's conversation with Eugene Levy, not just because he did so well, because he did, but because he reminded me so much of his mum in the way he talks, the way he looks down while talking, each move of his face, and then the piercing, genuine eyes just absolutely blew me away. It was as if he embodied the best qualities of his mother. Now, Happy Sailing made this interesting point. The very first thing I noticed was Prince William saying the most important thing to him is his family. And I know he's not king yet. I do find it striking because Queen Elizabeth would never have said that, believing her duty was to the nation first. And that statement is the difference in generations. That's really interesting, isn't it? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's just a kind of an age thing that it's something she wouldn't personally talk about. And obviously she was very torn as a young mother, having to go away on these big, long official tours around the Commonwealth.
It's a good observation,
leaving
I
her
thought.
children,
yeah. While Susanna wrote, so unfamiliar with William's voice compared with Harry's. I thought, is that what he sounds like? Whereas with Harry, we never stop hearing him talk. Please do keep those comments coming in. We love them. They fascinate us, they intrigue us, they amuse us sometimes, and I do have a strong suspicion that a few of you will have a few things to say about our next story. That's because we are heading back to Africa, in particular the Central African nation of Chad, where the Environment Minister has cut ties with the charity African Parks after 15 years. Now, regular viewers will remember that Prince Harry sits on the board of African Parks and has been involved with the charity since 2016. Now, the government, Rebecca, made a 4-page statement to explain why they were removing the charity from the country, and it was pretty damning, wasn't it?
It was outspoken, probably very unwelcome to Harry and his team as well. So you're right, the government made clear they were cutting ties with African Parks, who have obviously been in charge of protecting some of their land. They described the charity as being disrespectful. They said that poaching had gone up, not down. They even raised questions over its funding, where it was going, the money was coming from and where it was going to. It could not have been more damning, and I think it could not come at a worse time for Prince Harry.
It's the blows just keep coming, don't they? It's like it's not the first scandal to rock African Parks, Richard. And what does it do for Harry's ambitions to be a global philanthropist?
Well, I think we all know how important Africa is to Harry and to Prince William. You know, they both love the continent, and Harry said he feels at home there. Well, African Parks was his last charity connection to the continent. Because remember that he resigned as a co-patron of Centre Barley, so now it's just African Parks that's left, of which he's a director. So it's very awkward timing. And like you say, we've had horrible allegations before. I think I should give a bit of context about where these controversies come from. Essentially what African Parks is rich foreigners from outside Africa buying up vast areas of the continent to try to preserve the wildlife. So it's a really worthy cause in the sense that they want to save the rhinos and try and help preserve wildlife, but it can be very controversial. And interestingly, Prince William has taken a different view. So, for example, in Kenya, you had the people working for African Parks were stopping any poaching or whatever and involved in quite a lot of horrible stuff. There were allegations of torture and things like that. And this was against a tribe which for centuries has hunted, within that area. And so then the charity is preventing them from doing so. And there's been an argument between Prince William and Harry, which Harry talks about in his memoirs actually, because whereas Harry favours this approach of outsiders buying up big areas and controlling them, William has been keener to try to work with the people who live there.
Right.
So controversy does come through African Parks because of that, but so far it appears that Harry will stick with it. He strongly, believes in the charity, but there's no doubt that this is seriously awkward.
And it remains on their board, doesn't it? Yeah.
I'm just so lost for words, really. It's like Centre Bali and African Parks both sort of like have these profiles because of Prince Harry. I mean, what's going on when they're both going so badly wrong?
Well, I think it will make certain organisations think twice about whether they want to be associated with him now. I mean, ironically, Harry and Meghan are flying to New York today, the day we're filming, to collect a humanitarian award in the city for their work on social media,
right.
And online abuse and grooming of children. Will they get awards like that in the future if they bring with them a whole lot of trouble? Who knows?
I mean, there's no doubt that, it's a real sucker punch to Harry. He's going up there on a podium to collect a humanitarian award, and at the same time he's got a government of a country making a string of allegations against the charity of which he is a director. It's really damning.
No one welcomes a sucker punch, do they? That's a word, isn't it? It's a good word.
Not one we often use, actually, but I think it's probably very appropriate in this case.
Let me ask you this, Rebecca. If Harry was still part of the royal family, do you think this would be less likely to happen? It just feels like maybe the UK government would have stepped in to help try and smooth things over.
Yes and no. I mean, I don't think we can say the royal family are immune from this. I mean, obviously, we've just been talking about Michael Fawcett and the Prince's Foundation, and that has been very problematic for the King in recent years. So I don't think we can put them on a pedestal and say they're immune from this. But I think a lot of problems are caught in their infancy because, of course, not only do they have a big palace machinery, but they work very closely with Whitehall, with the Foreign Office. So I think a lot of these problems are often, either picked up and dealt with or headed off at the pass at a very early stage. And it shows you that Harry doesn't have that support mechanism there anymore.
Yeah, those dreaded men in grey suits have their uses.
They do have their uses.
It's crazy, isn't it? Well, obviously, we'll bring you more on that story as it develops. Well, now from the savannas of Chad to the catwalks of Paris. We do cover a lot of ground on this show. That's because the royals cover a lot of ground. And a lot of royal watchers were surprised, to say the least, to see Meghan Markle pop up at the Balenciaga fashion show. Now, Rebecca, this was a significant moment for Meghan, wasn't it? A significant appearance.
It was a significant moment for her, yes. I think it took quite a lot of people by surprise. Whether it ended so well is another question. What made me smile about this, she was going, of course, to support the new head designer of Balenciaga, who is a long-term friend of hers. And she kind of teased her arrival there. It wasn't announced in advance. She teased her arrival on Instagram with the sight of her feet clicking and clacking down her corridor to a very kind of French tune, a very Gallic tune. And then she's kind of documented her entire experiences there on social media. But, my gosh, I mean, aside from someone who's, one half of a couple who kind of consider themselves environmental crusaders, flying to Paris just for a couple of days for a fashion show. it was kind of treated by her people like the second coming. And it was like...
Well, it was her first visit to Paris for 2 years, so maybe for them it is a big deal.
Well, her first visit to Europe, I think, for 2 years,
well,
and her first appearance at the...
Since the Invictus Games.
Yeah, exactly, in Germany, and her first visit to the Paris fashion shows. But, you know, and I don't want to denigrate the fashion industry because I'm a great champion of, you know, what it does for all our economies. But the way it was lauded, it was like she's a woman going there to sit on the front row, do a bit of clapping and then come home again.
Did you like the outfit?
I'll let you claim credit for what you called it, Jo.
I didn't know. A friend of mine texted me to say he thought it was stormtrooper realness. That was my favourite description.
I thought it was kind of cult leader chic, which is, I think, what you said to me. I mean, look, it's not my style, and I'm not a particularly stylish person, so what do I know?
Oh, no,
but I thought the kind of the drama around it and the kind of social media drops, it was just a bit like, it's not that big, guys.
Look,
as my son would say to me.
If it doesn't happen on social media, it doesn't happen.
My son always says to me, Mummy, it's not that big and it's not that deep. Indeed. And I think that was probably a prime example of this.
Well, you find you're wrong. Richard, we saw Meghan mingling with fashion royalty. How do you think she conducted herself with people like Anna Wintour, etc.?
Oh, I'm sure she was loving it, you know, being greeted by the supremo of fashion, Dame Anna Wintour, with kisses and this sort of thing. I mean, I couldn't believe it when I heard the news. I mean, look, to put this in context, just a few months ago, back in May, Prince Harry was giving an interview to the BBC saying he didn't think he couldn't envisage bringing his family back to Britain. Well, yeah, sure. I mean, Paris, you know, is another country. But, you know, Paris, I mean, the associations with it, it's where Harry's mother died. You know, it's got terrible associations. He writes in his memoirs about retracing his mother's roots. So for Meghan to go off there on her own without Harry is very odd, although she wasn't on her own, of course. She was with a man who's been described as her second husband, Marcus Anderson, who works for the Soho House private members club chain. Yeah. So she went with him. And I just thought she was clearly loving it. I mean, we know she's always loved fashion. It's the sort of thing when she was doing her TIG blog, she would have dreamed about, you know, being swooned over by fashion people. And
where was Prince Harry when all this was going on? Do we know?
I mean, back at home with the children, is my understanding. I mean, I have to say, social media, which, as you know, I have kind of strong views on personally, but it can pick up on these things very quickly and quite mercilessly. And there's been some incredible memes of her kind of dramatically walking to a car with her head held up and her arm like that, and likening it to the Zoolander character, the Ben Stiller character.
I mean, fashion is always rife for being...
Yeah,
I do love to imagine, what would Prince Harry have worn if he had gone with her? You know, you've got her in her extraordinary sort of robes-like outfit. What would Harry have worn? He couldn't have just turned up in his old grey suit, could he?
I think he probably would have, actually, yeah.
Whatever he was told
to. Or maybe
wear.
David Beckham style sarong or something like that. Maybe that's something to look forward to in future years.
We will never know. Now, jokes aside, Richard, Meghan posted a few Instagram stories, and you mentioned that, you know, obviously Paris is quite a poignant place for Harry and the royal family. And she's been criticised for being tone deaf for some of these posts. What happened and what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, some of them came across as particularly crass, because there was one where it was in a car travelling around Paris, which you think, oh, you know, it's given, obviously her mother-in-law died in a car crash there. It just seemed a bit unfortunate. I mean, I'm sure, obviously, she didn't intend any of that.
I mean, personally, I thought that was a bit clutching to put those things together.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it was just a bit unfortunate, I would say. Yeah. But I just think the whole fashion thing is so interesting because, you know, the royal family's always had quite a sort of interesting relationship with fashion. So, for example, Queen Elizabeth, she attended her first fashion show at the age of 91.
I was there.
and there's a reason for that. I would say that fashion is the antithesis of royalty. You know, by its nature, it's ephemeral. It changes from year to year, whereas royalty should be constant. You know, there should be style, but someone like Diana, you know, I would say set trends. She didn't follow fashion. I mean, Princess Diana, she only ever really went to one fashion show, I think, and that was when she'd left the royal family. It was 2 years before her death. I think prior to that, yes, she'd gone to sort of London Fashion Week to show her support, but sort of as a supporter, not there to sit on the front row with the Kardashians or whoever else Meghan was with. You know, so I think
it's the difference between celebrity and royalty, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's the point. So Meghan's loving it, but for me, it's making clear that, you know, she isn't royalty anymore.
Yeah,
I have to say, I was most horrified about the bit of the video that showed them with all their feet up on the seats. But that just maybe shows you what I'm like at home. Never put your feet on the seats of a car or public transport.
Absolutely. Rebecca, I want to move on to a story that you spotted in the Telegraph, something that piqued your interest. Tell us about that.
Yeah, because, well, I hate to use the off-word.
Yeah,
I know. I hate to almost say the hypocrisy of this, but it's true. So there was a very interesting story in the Telegraph at the beginning of the week talking about Harry and his security situation and his recent trip to the UK, and it revealed in it that on 2 occasions someone who is known to be a fixated person of interest came into very close proximity to him, which was very troubling to him and his security team. And as we know, we've discussed on this programme many times, especially with our colleague Di Davis, who used to be head of Royalty Protection at Scotland Yard. He always says the biggest threat to a member of the royal family is not necessarily a bomb or a gun, it is these fixated people. So it was an interesting feature, and they were arguing very much from a pro-Harry point of view. This demonstrates why he should be entitled to more Metropolitan Police protection when he's in this country. But putting that to one side, buried away in the middle of the piece was a line which really struck out to me, which said that, highlighted what I revealed about a year or so ago, that the case that Harry's pursued against the Home Office over the lack of security he gets has driven a wedge between him and the King, because the King feels that he could have been dragged into a case against his own government. And it seems like people close to Harry have briefed to the newspaper, yes, this was indeed true. So much so that the King wrote a private letter to Harry explaining why trust between them had broken down and why this case made it impossible for him to have any interactions with him at the moment, which I find really quite extraordinary that they would reveal the existence of a private letter.
So that must have come from Camp Sussex.
It has to have come from them.
Yeah.
A letter from his father to him, because again it highlights the point we've discussed on this programme only very recently, that, although the King does, to a certain extent, want to repair his relationship with his son, when private confidences are constantly being made public, it makes it very difficult for him to do so. And I think the existence of a letter that he's written to his son explaining this really does break that private bond between them yet again.
I'd love to hear what Thomas Markle thinks about that. I mean, remember what happened when it was People magazine, it was friends of Meghan had stepped forward to say that she'd written a letter to her father, and he was so outraged by this that then he spoke to the Mail on Sunday, and it caused no end of controversy.
Yes.
And a big court case, which she won. But I think the irony of it should not be lost on anyone.
Yeah, it's like a one-way street, privacy, isn't it? Sometimes that's how it feels. It's really interesting. Well, speaking of Thomas Markle, we're going to talk about this now. And the Mail on Sunday published an astonishing piece this week after one of their journalists, Caroline Graham, found herself stuck in the 19th floor apartment of Thomas's during a 6.9 magnitude earthquake in the Philippines. Now, Rebecca, Thomas Markle, obviously estranged from his daughter Meghan, said some quite remarkable things in this interview, didn't he?
I think the most remarkable and the kind of saddest really was when you're obviously stuck in the middle of an earthquake, which you can't control, you start to think about your own mortality. Obviously, there's a lot of people been affected by what happened out there. And he was saying, I wonder if I don't come through this, would my daughter ever come to my funeral? I mean, that's a sad thought for a man
kind of a horrible
of his age.
discussion to be having with a journalist, really, of all people.
Yeah, I mean, whether he should do that or not is, up for debate.
It's an interesting question, though, isn't it? I mean, would she attend his funeral? It's hard to imagine, given that she hasn't spoke to him for years.
I don't think she would. I don't think she would. And I think that's regardless of what's gone on, between them. That's obviously very, very sad.
Well, it goes without saying that everyone at Palace Confidential wants to send all our love to any viewers in the Philippines who were affected by that earthquake. Right, well, if there was one member of the royal family that you'd want to be with you when an earthquake hit, it might be Princess Anne. It just seems like she might know what to do, doesn't it? Well, thankfully, She wasn't near any natural disasters, but she was in the beautiful English county of Dorset. Rebecca, what was going on?
Very much typical Princess Anne, out there shaking hands, meeting people. She was at an equestrian event with Martin Clunes, well-known actor in the UK, highlighting what being involved in horses and everything equestrian can do for young people, and also visiting local constabulary. It's that, as we always highlight, it's those bread and butter engagements that the royal family still need people to do, because it's how they connect with people, you know, on a daily basis. So, you know, long may that continue.
Oh, hear that? That's right. It's time to go from one royal hero to the next, this one a little more unsung. Richard, who am I talking about?
We are talking about the Duke of Kent, who celebrates his 90th birthday today. Obviously, it's particularly poignant because he lost his wife, Catherine, the Duchess, last month. But, you know, he's a remarkable character who just served his cousin, Queen Elizabeth, you know, loyally, dutifully for decades. So I really hope he has a good day.
Excellent. Do we know, Rebecca, how we might be spending the day?
Well, interesting, I noticed on the Court Circular this week, he was out doing an engagement yesterday on the eve of his 90th birthday, so God bless him. So the royal family...
You know, support to come back, but Harry is just grifting everywhere, because what else can he do? He's lost. He is out there alone trying to make a way, and he doesn't care who he hurts. He doesn't really have any backbone. He's just in a position now that I think he regrets he's in because of his wife. What else can he do now? Right? He is trying, and also very not nice to what his brother is trying to do, because he's jealous of his brother, and he's going to get what's coming to him sooner than later, I think, because Harry is not going to bring any worth or value to the monarchy, period. It's never going to happen, because as long as Meghan is aligned with Harry, they will never show up in a way to be supportive and aligned in purpose with the monarchy. And if that's not the case, then you are a threat to the monarchy and the work. And Harry is playing right into that. So he cannot be trusted at all.
And I just think it's too late anyway. I think it's too late. I think Harry's missed the boat. We're never going to forget the comments, but also, you know, as he quite rightly pointed out, he had a window of time before Prince George emerged. Now, Prince George is still incredibly young, 12 years old, Pete, but he's emerging earlier, of course, because of the health struggles with King Charles. So indeed, for Harry, the window was even shorter than initially it was going to be. But the problem is he's botched the window so badly, he's made everyone hate him during that window of time. So it's like it's already too late. But first, by the age of 50, we've likely lost half our collagen, opening the door to aching joints, brittle bones, and tired-looking skin that ages you before your time. But there's hope. Native Path collagen peptides are helping millions refill that gap. And here's what sets Native Path apart. Just one clean ingredient. Third-party tested for heavy metals and purity. No fillers, no junk, over 5 million jars sold, and 8,000 five-star reviews. I think that says it works, right? Native Path customers are reporting stronger, more flexible joints, finally moving without pain, smoother, more youthful skin that turns back the clock, and thicker, fuller hair in as little as 14 days. Imagine waking up feeling like yourself again, active, confident, and pain-free. Right now, visit trynativepath.com/outspoken for a special bundle deal at a fraction of the retail price, backed by a risk-free 365-day guarantee.
We have a food industry that knows nothing about health, and a health industry that knows nothing about food, right? And once you really understand that, you can see why we're in the problems that we are. We watch TV, and they're feeding us all these foods that are refined and processed and get us sick. And the next commercial is a commercial about a pill that we're supposed to take. The forefront of what we do here at Native Path is we try to get people off the path of what most people are doing is eating that stuff and taking those pills, and get them on the path to eating, moving, and living in harmony with their biology. Collagen is, in my opinion, it's the one thing that if you take it, everything else starts to get easier or unnecessary, because it's so foundational in the structure of your body. We're deficient in this very important protein that our ancestors got plenty of. So it's a big part of what I say is important when we're aging. You have to have this as part of your diet.
But act now, supply is tight and demand is soaring. This deal won't last long. Don't let another day go by feeling older than you look. Visit trynativepath.com/outspoken today, or just click on the link below this video in the description box. But now, back to the show. I want to talk about Princess Catherine for one moment. I mean, she's obviously had such a strong week in so many ways, not just that appearance, but of course also her own solo appearance where she unveiled her vision of love and the fact that she wants to be the queen of love in the future. But P. Dinah, so much of the mainstream media continue to, I believe, degrade and undermine Catherine by calling her by her previous name, Kate Middleton. Now, in the past, I used to be like, okay, I sort of, because when I was in the mainstream media at GB News and the Daily Mail and places like that, your bosses would always say to you, P. Dinah, no, Dan, we have to use Kate Middleton because otherwise it's not picked up by the search and by the algorithm on YouTube or Google or wherever it happens to be. But it's like, I'm sorry, that's proven not to be true. I made the decision pretty early on, P. Dinah, in my sort of outspoken voyage that no, I'm going to take that risk and I'm now going to refer to Kate Middleton as Catherine unless I'm actually quoting from a publication which calls her Kate, because then it's within the context of doing so. But what we've seen this week is the British Bashing Corporation, the BBC, the state broadcast have to apologise to Catherine for using the name Kate Middleton. Well, they didn't do that for any algorithmic reasons. I believe it's a deliberate attempt to undermine her. And Colin Brazier, my friend, former GB News presenter, has now pointed this out from the Daily Mail after they posted yet again. This was in regards to her latest Mother Nature film. Kate Middleton rewears her favourite Barber waxed jacket. And Colin wrote, the Daily Mail wouldn't consider its worldview anti-monarchist. So why do its writers insist on routinely stripping the Princess of Wales of her royal title? Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor deserved his downgrade. But what did the future queen do wrong? And I think this has reached a bit of a tipping point, P. Dinah, because at the end of the day, unless people in the mainstream media are bold enough and brave enough to say, it's been years now, if we all start referring to Catherine as Catherine, the Princess of Wales, or even Princess Catherine, then the public will come with us. So I sort of do agree with Colin Brazier now that this does feel like yet another mainstream attempt to sort of go anti-monarchy.
Well, I think there was an issue with calling Catherine because of Camilla, the two seeds. I know that it came down from the House of Windsor that they wanted Catherine to be called Kate to differentiate between the two C's.
And that was on Charles's side, wasn't it?
Yes, right. Okay, so why do you think that is still happening? Could it still be coming from the king? Is this
I believe
why?
so. Certainly with the Daily Mail, right? Because we know that Tobin Andre, who is the communications director for King Charles, is a former deputy editor at the Daily Mail. I mean, I know him. He used to be my boss, actually, at the Mail. You know, nice guy, but he's there to do what Charles wants. And we've seen a lot of the briefing to the people who I describe as like the wicked witches of the Daily Mail, you know, Amanda Patel and Liz Jones, you know, all of the people who've been attacking Catherine. I think that's a very good point. He'll be like, no, you just keep on calling her Kate Middleton. That's fine with us because we've got our Queen C, you know, and our Queen C is Queen Camilla, okay? And that's who matters right now.
Yeah, that's I think why they're doing it. And so he's just trying to prop up, Camilla. And the king, I think, just doesn't care that they're saying that. So, but I think to Catherine's point, she's strong in her mission, her power as the future queen. to just let it, roll off of her shoulders. People will do that, but she still is who she is to us. We're never going to strip her of calling her Catherine. And glad that you're doing that. I'm doing that as well, and others who respect her position. But, I think her power and who she is will remain strong. And I think it even strengthens her in her stance when she is undermined by the news publications when they do that. So, um, hey, what can we do? But she has her worth, and we feel her, and we don't let that change how we feel about her at all. But it is disrespectful. It says a lot more about these publications than it does about Catherine, because she's doing a great job.
And then the other big royal news of the week, P. Dinah Fergie, Sarah Ferguson, it looks like she's finally going to flee the United Kingdom. This from Andrew Lowney, of course, behind Entitled, the autobiography, it wasn't an autobiography, was it? The biography, which effectively did lead to the downfall of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, but also Sarah Ferguson. He writes on his Substack, P. Dinah, Fergie has a strong desire for a more secure future and to escape the conflict and financial impropriety she has been involved in the past few decades. Multiple sources close to Fergie have confirmed that she had moved to the US in a heartbeat if she could land her own TV show. For years, Fergie has had a strong desire to follow in the footsteps of her TV idol Oprah Winfrey. Back in 2002, Fergie filmed a pilot that would have given her the afternoon slot that Oprah occupied for 25 years. However, a top TV producer decided to give the gig to Ellen DeGeneres instead. Would you watch Fergie on TV? Where do you think she'll move? Beverly Hills, Portugal, or elsewhere? Well, I mean, P. Dinah, look, I think this is a pipe dream now. Because if you look at some of the headlines, coming out of the US over the past 24 hours, there is now a reckoning over Epstein. And actually, the Jeffrey Epstein reckoning, I think, is going on much more in the US in some ways than it is the UK. Because if you look at the people in the UK that had these connections to Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell in jail, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor stripped of everything, Sarah Ferguson loses her Duchess title and her reputation, Peter Mandelson, the former US ambassador, booted out of his job. So you could argue actually the reckoning is coming much more in the United States than the United Kingdom. But as a result of that, isn't Fergie just totally barking up the wrong tree, thinking that she's going to get a TV deal? I mean, really, Pete Dinah, would anyone touch her stateside now?
Fergie, girl, just take your butt on to the Portugal, go somewhere else. Don't come to the United States. It's just not going to happen for you here. It is, a lot of things are happening here. I mean, Epstein's story is everywhere here. And, your association, we see that. And I think she can only do herself good by just disappearing. I mean, there's just no way she's going to be able to come here and think that she's going to be welcomed. She's got enough to just live a comfortable, peaceful life. Why not just go do that? Why try to come here and make yourself, have opportunity? It just seems like you're just asking for trouble with that, So no, I don't think people would even care to watch her. We know the association that she had, her association, the things that she said about him being a super friend. Like, no, get out of here. Sorry, Fergie, it's not going to happen.
Yeah,
She just
greed.
needs to disappear.
Yep. But it's greed. It's
Yeah,
insanity.
it
It's
is.
delusion. And she was able to turn it around so many times before. She was selling access to Prince
Yeah,
Andrew, and he was Prince Andrew at the time, hence why I'm using that
right.
title. And I was at News of the World at that time, and because the fake sheikh Maz Mahmood ended up being jailed and he was sort of discredited, she was able to get away with it again. But I mean, at the end of the day, she was selling access to Andrew. I mean, go and watch the video. Yeah, it
Right.
may have been set up in a very immoral tabloid sting, but she was doing
Mm.
it, and
Yeah,
she's had comeback after comeback after comeback, and I just think this time it may be too
not this
difficult,
time.
but never rule it out. I will be watching what she's doing with interest,
Ooh,
and I do understand she's still, for a lot of people there is still a likability factor there with Fergie, and I do understand that. But I think the idea, given this Epstein scandal is dragging so many people in the US, big names, big Democratic names losing everything, years later because of these emails being released. The idea that anyone is actually going to touch Fergie, I just think it's for the birds. I mean, remember, she's even been dropped by ITV here in the UK. But P. Dinah, fascinating discussion. And of course, if you want much more of it, then do sign up to P. Dinah's super duper YouTube channel. I absolutely love it. Brilliant analysis of the royal family. And of course, if you do want first access to our uncancelled after show here on Substack, then you just need to subscribe to www.outspoken.live. You will get twice the length of what you have just viewed every single weekday with our range of guests, from Lady Colin Campbell to Angela Levin to P. Dinah, who you've just seen, of course, to According to Taz and Brittany from the Royal News Network, plus special guests like Lauren the Insider and Tom Sykes. Make sure